Well, today on the show, we're going to be looking at developmental issues in Africa. And of course, tackling the issues, tackling the problems. And let's see how we can make a headlong way to see how we can suggest on how we can tackle these issues. Well, so many literatures have been flying around. You may have come across some of the literature that has to do with the issues in Africa. And some of the literatures we have read how the Europeans underdeveloped Africa. And of course, some will read that how Africans underdeveloped themselves. All the analysis points to the fact that there's been so much, analysis concerning the development of Africa. Well, to look at all this on the program today, we're so privileged to have a professor from the University of Benin, Professor of Vocational and Technical Education from University of Benin. I'm talking about Professor Victor Igbenedion. So you're welcome to the program, Africa Discourse.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And also, we're also expecting, he's going to be joining us when he comes on board, talking about Dr. Peter Owaibi, a legal luminary, and of course, a political analyst. When he comes on board, we're going to have him on so that he can join us virtually. Well, just as we do on this show, we'll let you see some of the major headlines that are making the news at the moment on the continent of Africa. So we've got various headlines that we're going to be following at this time. The first one we have here, Israel commiserates 1 year since Hamas attack on October 7th. Israel commiserates 1 year since Hamas attack on October 7th. That's the first headline. Then the second headline reads that fighting in Sudan's North Darfur kills at least 13 children. And that's a recent report from UNICEF. Fighting in Sudan's North Darfur kills at least 13 children. The fighting in Sudan has been a long-age fight. We still remember how the entire Darfur was captured. And of course, the issues are still ongoing. Fighting in South North Sudan, Darfur kills at least 13 children. That's a recent report from the UNICEF. Then we're talking about the president of Democratic Republic of Congo now. Tshisekedi walks out over shadows of summit of Francophone countries. Yes, that's headline number 3. Headline number 3, Tshisekedi walks out over shadows summit of Francophone countries. That's the headline number 3. Then for headline 4, Rwanda starts a vaccine trial against a deadly Marburg virus. Yes, that seems to be one major health issues that is tearing Rwanda apart. Rwanda has been having it so wonderful until this recent attack at the Marburg virus. And while we have other countries in Africa, mpox ravaging the DRC, parts of eastern countries in Africa, even some parts of Nigeria too. We have the Marburg virus ravaging Rwanda. Rwanda starts vaccine trials against the deadly Marburg virus. That's the headline 4. Then for headline 5, which is the last one, we have 3 arrested in South Africa over massacre of 18 relatives. That's a very touching story there. We saw the attack recently in South Africa and how various persons were killed, persons of various nationality in South Africa. 3 arrested in South Africa over massacre of 18 relatives. You can Google so that you get to know the nitty-gritty of these headlines that we are following at this time. All right, so back on set now. I'm back to the discussion this afternoon. We're talking about Africa's development and how we can actually tackle the issues. When we talk about development in Africa, there are so many ways that you may look at it. You talk about political development, you talk about social development, and of course, you talk about economic development. All of them, in one way or the other, are intertwined. Because when you talk about political development, you may stretch it from the North Africa to South Africa. You find countries that are still struggling politically. And you take it from the west to the east part of Africa, you still find countries that are still struggling politically. You also talk about social development. It is still the same thing. So you see that development, underdevelopment, or issues of development in Africa are so encompassing. All right, so Professor, you're welcome one more time.
Thank you.
Now, Prof, when we talk about developmental issues in Africa, where do you think we can really start from? Where should we start from when we are looking at developmental issues in Africa?
Okay. You look at your introduction was talking about social or political, social, economic dimensions to development. And at the root of the whole thing is political development. And behind political development is education. If we don't get the political development, because the political aspect of our development dictates the other pace, the pace for the other dimensions, whether economic, because policies are formulated that impact on the other areas. So once the policy is deficient, it will cascade to the other areas. All right, we'll find that we have not been able to get our political setting very right. And so you have upheavals here and there. Almost all African countries, they have issues with leadership, and that is political. So if we cannot get that one right, it impinges on the other areas. And how do we get it right? Our people are educationally impoverished also. So if a leader comes to them and just give them carrots, say, take, they run after. Even the supposedly enlightened people, they are carried away by money, small money that they will give to them. So it's a big problem until the political system is right. We are going to start having underdevelopment in Africa. And as I said earlier, what is the education? Because the education background of the people, it will affect their leadership, it will affect the followership also. Majority of us, you can see the out-of-school children is very high in Nigeria, especially in the northern part of the country. They don't go to school. Money is voted for their school. The political class, they mismanage the money, and this Almajiri system continues there. And so when there is a little spark, you saw them during the riot. They go about vandalizing everything, so that it is a cause for insecurity in the country. Nobody is now safe all through Africa. You're talking about Rwanda earlier on.
Yeah.
The people that were trying to get it right, but they have this
the Marburg virus
issue now, which can deplete the economic economy of the country.
And the population too.
And the population. Yeah. There's power in population, even though we grumble about it. Look at China. I think it's the most populated, and India, they are the two most populated countries in the world. They are taking advantage of their population. But right now, in Africa, we have issues. How do we get it right? Because when you look at socially, there's a problem. Our youth, we have issues. A situation where youth only think of how to make money. And so, because they want to make money, they go for money rituals and so on. They want to drive outlandish cars without any visible means of income. Then you know that the value system is a problem.
Okay, let's rest it there, because it seems as this discussion progresses, we're going to be looking at maybe trying to look at the specifics of some of these issues now, because the way the youths are becoming in Nigeria may not be the same way that youths in South Africa are becoming. I think we also need to situate that now.
Yes, let me just interject.
Yeah.
They are not the same, Is it not in South Africa there is this phobia? They have problem beating up Nigerians and other people there. And just last week, a South African woman was saying that let them bring the colonial master back. That nothing is working. That they have gone back. They were better off with the colonial masters.
Even in South Africa?
In South Africa. And they were showing slums. Slums. They say when the colonial masters were there, everything was working. Schools, even though they were under oppression, schools were running. Everything was running. Hospital was running. But now, there's a problem. Okay, so, and it's the leadership, that is the political leadership of the people. What is in the average African's mind, I'm sorry to say, is how to corner the country's resources for personal gains. I was seeing a video on Mobutu Sese Seko, the vast empires, that he had. And he was the guy that the CIA used to topple Patrice Lumumba. Okay? He came, he was a stooge to CIA. And all the resources of the country, he had so much to himself. But go and look at them today now. They have all deteriorated. Nothing comes out of it. I wish we can learn through history. This primitive accumulation of wealth that we have in this Africa is a big problem to our development, whether politically or socially or economically. A situation where one man can corner the resources of the country. As we are talking, a former head of state, they are still tracking the money that he carried in Nigeria. They are still tracking them, how to retrieve them. And it's a huge problem. These are monies that can transform a whole generation.
Okay. Now, what would you say about the recent incursion of European interests, the Western interest into government politics on the continent of Africa? Now, vis-a-vis before this time, you and I, we've said that the root cause of developmental issues in Africa has been corruption. It has been wars, civil wars here and there. Then, of course, some will even say health issues, disease. We had the COVID-19, and of course, we're also having the mpox issues now. The Marburg virus is in Rwanda. Now, what would you say about this recent incursion of Western interests into Africa vis-a-vis our earlier belief, the beliefs we've always had ab initio?
The belief that
our problems are caused by corruption, caused by wars, civil wars here and there, and caused by diseases.
See, there's no time that the Western world will stop incursion to Africa, because Africa is very blessed with material and mineral resources, more than any other place in the world. And it will appear that our senses were stultified, when they left. We thought everything would be an El Dorado. We will carry all this wealth and make more progress. But that is an optical illusion. It becomes a problem for us because we have not been able to harness our resources for our own personal development. And these people, they know it very well. So, whether subtly or covertly, they make overtures to our leaders here and say, come, we will help you out. There's no free lunch, they will say. Their interest is what they want to harness and maintain. So if they come, as they are doing, you have read in history, partition of Africa. No? They are coming again in another new form because of the deficiency of the leadership in Africa. They say, you have these resources, you are not developing them. Let us help you develop them. Oh, France was carrying everything in the Francophone country, and you did not develop. We will come. The Chinese will say, we are going to help you out. It's for a season. After some time, they start to help themselves also.
Because there's an interest.
Yes, an interest. So until they say, he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. So we must look inward. And no man is an island. No country is an Africa. The other president of Rwanda, he looked inward. They had to discipline like China. China said, we are not going anywhere. We are going to lock ourselves inside this place for some years and begin to think of how we can develop our country. And it paid off. Instead of us to always rely on developed countries to come and think for us, to come and do everything for us, we have to. Ordinary agriculture that we can harness to make ourselves. There are countries that don't even have all these resources. But you hear that we are in a knowledge economy. And that is what is driving this Western world. They have the knowledge. We have the resources. We are not having the knowledge to harness these resources to our own favor. That is a very huge problem. And where is it going? Maybe it is the kind of education that we have.
Okay, let me pause you.
Yeah.
We're expecting Dr. Peter Owabi, if he's there right now. Okay. All right, so when he comes on, we'll just let you have him. Now, Professor Victor Igbenedion, a while ago, you talked about South Africa.
Yes.
We saw the apartheid era in South Africa, but it beats one's imagination now for some South Africans to want to prefer that era right now. Now, what do you think is going on in South Africa as it stands now?
The economy is mismanaged. So that the structures that the colonial masters put down, like I was talking about hospitals and schools and everything, they were running seamlessly, even though they were under the siege of the colonial masters. But these things have been handed over to their people, and they are not working. Why are they not working? It's a huge question that somebody must answer. They are not working, so to speak. And if they are not working, it means that something is fundamentally wrong. The resources are not properly deployed to the areas they are supposed to be deployed to. So the people corner some of these resources. The leadership corner these resources, just like we have in Nigeria. I said the woman was lamenting, that it was better they went back.
They go back to apartheid era?
Yes. Can you imagine that one? It's to tell you the level. She's not an ordinary woman. She's a highly educated woman. Was complaining very bitterly. That's to show you the level to which they have deteriorated. They could not, they were, because they saw Nigerians, that's my own personal view. They saw Nigerians going there to go and do some work for them, many jobs. They left everything for Nigerians. And very soon, they found that Nigeria was cornering every aspect of their economy. That is what led to the xenophobia. They said, no, you people cannot come and dominate us here. But it's your country. If you were doing all these things, you won't have problem.
Yeah, but do you think that seems to be the main issue in South Africa now? Or because what we hear is that apartheid may have left South Africa on paper, but in reality, you still find that mass, segregation in South Africa. You still have some areas where you still have white schools for the white South Africans as against the black South Africans. You still have some, social amenities meant for white South Africans as against black South Africans. So I think the issue of xenophobia, the issue of maybe Nigerians going to South Africa is only recent.
What I'm trying to explain to you, they felt that they have arrived, even the South Africans. That's why the Igbos in Nigeria, there is a special stock of people. Majority of them are in that South Africa, and they are eking out a living. Now, these South Africans who have been under the colonial masters, under bondage, so to speak. Once that gap was removed from them, they now find themselves as masters also. Instead of looking inward, yes, and say, let us exploit this area that these people used to exploit us, so that we can corner our own resources for ourselves. They left it for their fellow Africans to come and take over. And now they are complaining. It's just like, you see, even the European countries and American countries that we are running to, they are trying to streamline them, like Canada. They put new policies down that it's not everybody that can come now. After they have gotten enough manpower for themselves, you find that there will be no need to allow Africans to come there. But as I said, no country is an island.
Yeah, so don't you think that woman, the one you're making reference to now, is probably representing the issues wrongly? I mean, rather than, talk to the issues that, hey, why don't we look inward? She's calling for apartheid era.
Well, that's the way she will look at it ordinarily. Because she was in an era, earlier we were talking, myself and yourself.
Yeah.
Earlier, you see, you made reference to the fact that at least you grew up in the 70s.
Yeah.
The economy was not as bad
as it is now.
You can go to secondary school. An average person can go to secondary school. The father will be able to afford school fees and all that. So if you now talking and making reflection to the past, in other words, you are saying the past is better than the present, because the cost of living indices in the country right now is a huge problem to everybody. People cannot drive their cars because they cannot afford. And there is, as I said, the cost of living as a result of removal of fuel subsidy is cascading in all directions. You cannot go to hospital and say, oh, you can have it easy. You cannot buy our staple food that we used to produce, like gari and everything. I sometimes will just be wondering if a young family of four children, they are going to school, you are buying books, and these days we are told that you cannot use the book that you used last year.
Modern education.
The junior one. It's an invention of private institutions, schools, so that they can make more money. And you see a lot of exploitation. We exploit ourselves so much at the detriment of all of us at the end of the day. People cannot go to school properly now. And there is no breathing space for even the children, which is a wrong educational approach. They are caged in. During holidays, they have to teach them what to do. They come to school, they collect money from them, say, you are doing extension, you are doing this one, you are doing this one. So the brain will not rest. Come to the university, all these ones that they are doing, you find students, you are teaching them, they are looking askance. They don't even know where they are. And researches have been done, say, okay, they bring good JAMB scores, and they cannot do well.
Okay. Now, Professor, now that we're talking about education now, because I know that that's your area of specialization. I mean, you are a professor of education
business
at
education.
the University of Benin. Now, a while ago, you said something that our problem is also connected to the fact that now we have more or less a knowledge-driven economy across the continent of Africa, as against
in the world.
In the world,
yes.
as against what we probably once had, the resource-driven economy.
Yes.
Now, knowledge is an offshoot of education. Now, what do you think is wrong with the kind of educational system that we have in the country? Because it appears that some of the issues we're talking about now are probably as a result of the kind of education we have in Africa.
Yes.
Is there anything wrong with the kind of education that we are giving to our children in Africa?
I believe so.
What is it?
See, our children, we don't want them to even use their hands to do anything. Although there's what they call the vocational education fallacy. They try to implement it.
You say it's a fallacy?
Yes, which is wrong. You see, and
When you say it's a fallacy,
no, I'm not the one saying it. There's a book on it.
but the kind of, because we understand that the kind of education that institutions are given to children now in tertiary institutions in Africa is tilting towards vocation. So are we saying that it is fallacious? Is that what you're saying?
No. You see, it's just like you was making reference to something a while ago. You say the appetite
Era.
is still existing.
But
it's gone. It's gone in
on
paper.
It's gone, but in reality,
But you look at the vocational education itself. How is it implemented? A situation where, for example, in WAEC, in WASC, Wisconsin School Certificate, or NECO, they have the practical. They say it's like theoretical practical. And that's how I will call it. I've forgotten the name now. These things are not, they are not existent.
they call it practicals.
Yes, but
Theoretical practicals.
that's how I question it. You will not see the thing, they will say you are doing practical. But what happens when the 6334 system was being introduced to the country? They imported a lot of equipment and machinery to be able to help us. But you and I know, for instance, that those things, they didn't go anywhere. They rusted away in these schools. And people will come from all the way from the east and come and carry the thing away over there. Because nobody had any use for it. Everybody wants your children to read medicine, pharmacy, engineering, and all that one. And there is no engineer that can function without a technologist or a technician. They have ratio for each other. So no person can do it alone. Then you have more. For one engineer, for example, you will need like 4 technologists.
Okay. Let's look at the kind of democracy. I mean, it's the most popular system of government all across the world now. I mean, hence, even if we have some countries that we saw coup d'etat taking over them very recently, the whole world is going against, military and governments and all that, because democracy seems to be in vogue all across the world. Now, you and I know that this democracy we're talking about now, it's something that our colonial masters bequeathed, onto us. Now, would you want to say that perhaps the kind of democracy that they give to us, has been the problem in Africa, or the way we have decided to go about that's the kind of democracy that we took from our colonial masters?
All right. Democracy is run in Europe, Britain, for example.
Yeah.
Same thing in the US. Okay, we say they are the ones that bequeathed the system to us.
Yeah.
The kind of things that we experience in Africa here, even if we bring it down to Nigeria, is this the same thing that they go through there in their democratic process? You see,
what exactly do you mean?
Yes, for example, in their electionary process.
Okay, the way our leaders emerge.
Yes.
Okay.
The electionary process. The process is tainted here. Yes, very well. Apart from Thumb, who stood up, the former president of the U.S.,
okay,
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, yeah.
Who stood out like a sore thumb in recent times. They have been having their elections willy-nilly, and a leader will emerge. The same thing with Britain. You see how Britain changed their leadership the other day. Very simple process. I think there was a Nigerian, that was even an African that was appointed or elected or so. She stepped down on her own. Will you tell me that a black person will step down after attaining? So our mentality is what is affected. That's why I was talking about the kind of education that we get. if we don't carry ourselves out of this primitive acquisition, there will continuously be a problem. You see, the average European and American, he can have a few suits, a few clothes, and live in his apartment, and he will be content. It's because of the background, educational background they have. They learn how to be satisfied. We are talking about democracy. But look at the average Nigerian. Somebody who has entered the political office can buy a whole city. So it's our value system, the way we look at money. And until we get that one right, and I will bring it back. It's not because I'm a professor of education. If you are able to see, I was citing an example of the assets that Mobutu Sese Seko acquired. I'm able to assess and see how everything ends up. The thing did not, it cornered, what do they have in that Democratic Republic of Congo? All their minerals, they cornered them to himself. At the end, he died and left everything. The whole place is like a city that is stripped of everything. The whole
but before we continue to talk
Yes.
about the value system, perhaps the value system of individuals, some leaders in Africa, their value system and all that. Let us look at our legislations, our laws. Even as we talk about democracy now, you and I know that some of the things that emanate from a democratic system of governments in Africa are being supported because of the kind of legislation, the kind of laws that we have. I mean, take, for example, a president that comes up as a realization of democracy. That president is more or less like a semi-god. I mean, the president appoints, he fires, and all that, and all that, and all that. So I think, don't you think we need to go back to our laws or some of our legislation in Africa as a people?
Well, where we can tinker with some of these laws and make it better. But it's the implementers of the law. These people can circumvent the law to their own advantage. Okay, look at Nigeria now. There's virtually no area that you infringe the law that it doesn't have penalty that you will pay. But we can see people rape the law with impunity. They do anything and get away with it. So we have to arrive at that destination, that a leader will come who will say, I'm going to enforce this law. You know, it's not an easy thing. Once you step on toes, and toes you must step on. Once you step on their toes, you are likely to have, the person is likely to be killed because of the interest of the people that are in power. So these people, to start with, they are power brokers. The people, you may be sitting on your own, they will assess you that this guy, you have some clout. Let us sponsor you to a position. Can you buy the finger that fits you?
No way.
They have put you there, and it's their interest that you are going to maintain. They are going to sponsor their interest. Did the former president, immediately past president, did he have the resources to do the election by himself? He tried and tried. He didn't. He couldn't get it until some power broker said, come, we'll sponsor you. And eventually the thing worked out for him. And it was difficult for him now. The way we were looking at him, say, oh, he's a very strong man, he can do this. He couldn't do much. So the laws are there. The laws are meant for the people. But the enforcement of the law is a problem. You saw what happened recently. We are not dealing with that. We are dealing with the totality of Africa. So if somebody that they look as a high-handed person who wants to enforce the law, they will take him out of the system, so that the status quo will be maintained. And that's what happens all over the place. So not only countries. If they put you in a position and you want to do what is right, you have a problem.
Now, Prof, let us also talk about the sincerity of purpose in relationship now. I mean, about 54 countries of the African continent are members of the United Nations. And we saw recently that the U.S., even there's a suspicion to that now, that the U.S. is trying to push, about 2 African nations to be members of the Security Council at the United Nations. Now, the 79th edition of the General Assembly of the UN recently in New York, in the United States, we saw our own Vice President, talking about the need for nations of United Nations to really have this sense of inclusivity of African nations into the binding force that binds nations of UN together. Now, what he was trying to say is that let it not be that African nations keep on being those nations that only come to the table to watch. I mean, there should be a kind of an interwoven relationship, so that as other nations of the world are progressing, are developing, African nations will also be developing. Now, my question is, do you think, because some persons have said that there is a deliberate, position, of the super nations of the United Nations to continuously underdevelop Africa as a continent. So do you think there's that deliberate attempt, with the big nations, as it were?
Very well now, very well. How would they maintain the status quo if they now carry everybody along to be on the same status with them? You understand Benin? Let me speak a little Benin here.
Provided you interpret.
You say, I mean, now
okay.
You have been hearing the name, I mean, I mean,
So what's the interpretation to that?
Yes, nobody wants anybody to come to the same bracket with him. It's the selfish nature of man. So they may trumpet it like that we will carry our brothers along. They won't be able to do it. So it is we ourselves that can develop ourselves to the status that we have the reckoning of the world.
How do we do that?
It's true. Our ingenuity. They have stultified our own reasoning. We don't even reason anymore. They give us handouts, give us grants, give us everything. As I said earlier, let us lock ourselves. We are not going to take this one from this place. If it's agriculture, we face it. And as we face it, and we are hungry and we are working, you will see people coming out.
Yeah, well, if we look ourselves, Professor, a while ago you talked about that.
No country is an island.
No country is an island, one. And secondly, you also talked about the knowledge-driven economy that the world has today. So if Africa as a continent lock itself, we lock ourselves within, don't you think we may be doing ourselves some harm rather than good?
They say necessity is the mother of invention. When there's what I used to talk about as a lecturer, I say there's what they call dependency syndrome. And that's what students do. Once they see somebody who they think is smarter than them, they begin to attach themselves to that person. Not knowing that they have a bundle of potentials within
Capacity
to do so much. I don't know whether we have small time.
We do.
We
do.
My daughter, for instance, was in a class, and she was supposed to be sitting in the front. The teacher noticed that she was depending on our friend, and moved her to the back. Then she came home and was complaining. And women, they took advantage of it. Say, and my daughter, blah, 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 blah. So let us go to the school. The madam, the woman say, I'm the teacher of this class. I know the capacity, the same thing I will say of my students. He said, your daughter is depending on that one. I didn't have anything to say. We left.
So Africa as a continent, we keep on depending.
Yes, that's the dependency syndrome. If you are not left on your own sometimes, you cannot do anything. When you are now hungry, you now say, okay, I think I can do this thing. Oh. I think I can do this thing this way. I used to have an uncle who was very generous. Everybody likes him. To the extent that one of us will not even work, but he was receiving money from him because he had some business. That is not how to help people. You work. When I was working in the rig, as you see me, so I worked in the rig where they drill oil. They will say, come and work your gari. Let people work with their hands. My teacher, a chemistry teacher in the secondary school, he will say, in China, in Russia, there's nobody that is useless. All these ones are begging in the street. See, they will put you there even if you are blind. When you hear the alarm, when you hear this alarm, turn it. Everybody ought to be productive in one way or the other. But we encourage people to be so lazy. The other day, the governor said he was going to pack all these beggars out of the place. The beggars can be productive. But our people, because of our religious mentality, we want them to be there. And when we are going in the morning, we'll go and give them. There was a program I was listening to this morning. Somebody phoned in to say, hey, let us pray. He was criticizing, they said, one of them said,
the prayers. Yeah.
Yes,
that we don't need to pray.
We need to walk. Yeah. We are not walking. We are not walking. We should walk. We should get engaged and walk.
Now that you are suggesting that we should look inward, now, do you think Africa as a continent, are we ready to help ourselves, even as you are suggesting that we should look inward?
Yes.
Because one greatest problem that we have now is insecurity. Insecurity is more of a local, issue.
Yes.
Even if there are suspicions here and there that it's been sponsored externally and all that, but they are more local. Yes. I mean, we understand the issues, cultural issues, land ownership issues and all that. They are the reason why we have so much insecurity in some nations in Africa. So now that we know that we should look inward, so are we ready to also handle the issues ourselves? That, hey, this idea of fighting ourselves, this idea of taking charge of land, that it is our land and all that, we should ready to settle them. Are we ready to do that?
How can? When people are profiting from it, it boils down to the same leadership problem and the kind of education that I'm not talking about the enlightenment that people will have to know their rights. And as you said earlier, if the law is working, if somebody infringes on the law, nobody should be above the law. So people will just go to a house, kill in broad daylight with impunity, and do anything they like. Not too long ago, they were saying that everywhere is open now. You can do anything you like, which is wrong.
That's just an opinion.
Exactly, it's their opinion. I've not seen it anyway. But everybody is accountable. That is how a country runs. You don't do things with impunity. Say, what is going to happen? Yeah. It's not. The country will not work. It will not survive. So you see a few leadership people hold the country by the jugular. They are there. After their tenure, they extend the constitution. They say they want to go ahead. So we must enlighten people to be accountable. Not only the leadership, we ourselves.
They follow us too.
Yes, at our own level, we must be accountable. We must train. We should not collect money, bribe from our students as lecturers and say, they pass, let them go. Let my people go. Let my people go. We just do everything. Now, that one, it disturbs people who will have initiative. If you are in a class, I used to ask my students, say, in your class, you will know who is good and who is not good. If you have some modicum of intelligence at all. And you begin to, they will come and invite you when you graduate. You will say, no, I don't think I can do this job. I know the person that can do the job. Until we have a system like that is self-selective. People will now come out and say, yes, you are the person. I'll give you an example. I don't want to personalize it.
Yeah.
We went to one state to do an election. You know, lecturers, they carry them to state to do an election. In the night, they were paying us allowances. I was a gang leader there. So they paid us this allowance.
Yeah.
It was different from the one they paid to other people. I looked at the young man. He just removed 1,000 something from the money. I didn't see anything. The gang people in the night, they came to my room. We were still in the hotel. We were moving to the field next morning. They came there and said, Zuko, our other people, they got this type of money. Why is our own different? Somehow, one of them was there when the guy was paying the money. I said, ask him. I don't know whether one man that was there was a ghost or not, but he was a lecturer. He said, you don't know Professor Igbenedion. If you know him, you know he will say it the way it is. He cannot take our money. He cannot do it. No. I don't know him. I can't. I'm not able to see him again. How do you take people's money and you feel comfortable?
All right. Yeah.
So that is what I said. I don't want to personalize.
Yeah.
That was a testimony that I will carry to my grave. Honestly, I will carry it to my grave.
All right, so Professor Igbenedion, we want to say a very big thank you because we know that if we have time, you will keep on talking and looking at the whole issues. One thing that stands clear is that we should really educate our minds.
Yes.
That's your standpoint this afternoon on the program, because these issues are so glaring that Africa as a continent, we need to look inward. We have the abilities.
Yes.
We have the resources, even if we know that the world today is driven by knowledge. We have the resources, and who says we don't have the knowledge too? We do. We have the knowledge. All we need to do is to look inward, and we can really attend to our issues ourselves. So, Prof, thank you so much one more time for finding time to come on our program.
Appreciate it.
All right, so on to same time and next week on this television, independent television. My name is Evan Sunokuge. Goodbye, and God bless you.